Welcome in the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter, and I'm joined as always by my cousin Shane, who goes by Big Orange Balls on Twitter. What are you up to, you big undefeated Tennessee homer?
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Oh, man, I am fired up. I hope you can hear it in my voice. We got two guests on the line. We got Nick Roush, one of our favorites, Kentucky Sports Radio, John Reed, Fox Sports Knoxville. Gonna preview the big game here in the SEC, of course, Kentucky at Tennessee. We got coaches talking trash all over the league. We're finally going to talk some Auburn, Arkansas. I am fired up. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, I got a lot of feedback last night. Everybody, or today, they were just wanting to know where's the Arkansas news? Where's the Auburn news? And I said, man, I got, like you know, I got a little blistered yesterday, and we got to going, and even at the end, I even recapped all the games, and I felt like I was missing one. And then we got off, and then about 2 hours later, Mike says, you ain't going to believe it. We done dropped off Arkansas. We don't even care about them anymore, Mike. No, that is not true. We care about every team in the SEC, so we're going to open up with you boys. And we just figured you guys needed a whole day by yourself.
Yeah, exactly, Shane. But before we get into that game, man, I wanted to play this clip because it's something we've kind of, may have overlooked, Shane. I know Stephen Lasson, when he made his weekly appearance, he alluded to it. But, all off season, Shane, it was Jimbo versus Nick Saban and this back and forth. But really, it all started, Shane, with Lane Kiffin talking about NIL and how they got all this incredible budget to buy players in College Station. Those are his words, not mine. And Jimbo did not take kindly to that.
Have the same, funding resources as some of these schools do, for these NIL deals. And so it's basically like dealing with different salary caps. We now have a sport that has completely different salary caps, and some of these schools are, 5-10 times more than everybody else of what they can pay the players. So I know nobody uses those phrases, but that is what it is. So I joked the other day, I didn't know if Texas A&M was going to incur a luxury tax, and how much they paid for their signing class.
Now that game is here, Shane. Both these teams desperately need a win. And on the SEC coaches teleconference, Kiffin was asked about losing his defensive coordinator, DJ Durkin, to Texas A&M. These comments are gold. Yeah, he's like, we tried to keep them, but they outbid us. That's what they do over here. Oh boy, Lane Kiffin, man, he knows how to stick that knife into someone when they're on the ground, doesn't he?
Absolutely, kick him wide down. That's why I put the mortgage on this one, man. Because if this one gets out of hand, Ole Miss is just going to squeeze, and that's all because that's the mantra of Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, and one other one, Shane. I just thought this was gold. We've actually never had a clip from this guy featured on the show, but he is doing a tremendous job this season for the South Carolina Gamecocks. Special teams coordinator Pete Lembo. Man, this guy, he's an interesting character, Shane. His press conferences are some of the best in the SEC. But, of course, it was his unit that kicked things off against A&M. I just realized it seems like we're just beating the hell out of A&M. Apologies, but this is more about the quote than anything else. Pete Lembo on returning the opening kickoff. Man, this is a good one right here.
There's nothing more awesome in football, and I don't mean this with any disrespect to the opponent, but when you run a kickoff back along the opponent's sideline, it doesn't get much better than that. I mean, that's like standing on the street corner as a coach, or you're a regular guy. You're standing on the street corner, and a car goes by, and your girlfriend's sitting in the passenger seat of some other guy's car. That's the analogy that feels like when that kickoff return goes by you, down your sideline. So
So, like I said, Shane, I mean, this he's a quote machine down there. Special teams coordinator Pete Lembo. We got to give him credit for that one, don't you think?
Oh, that was awesome, man. I'm going to say, I may have to play that one twice, Mike.
So, hey, we're about to get all this Auburn, Arkansas before we get to our outstanding guests, Nick Roush, John Reed. But we love to try to hit on as many teams as we can. And I think I've come up with a fun little way to do that, Shane. So before we get to it, let me make sure you understand the topic here.
Yeah.
I got 7 games that I've picked out that are remaining on the SEC schedule.
Okay.
And these, I've ranked them, Shane, by, I think all of these have upset potential. And I'm going, so number 1, I think, is the biggest possibility for an upset. Number 7, maybe the least likely. But do you get what I'm going for here?
Yeah, probably not, but no, I'm just kidding. I think I got this one here. So, and let me chew it up and throw it back at you. So, basically, you're saying from the remainder of the schedule, 7 potential upsets that you some landmines laying out there, and you're going to do it from least likely to most likely to happen.
Right.
Okay.
And here's how I'll define an upset. I mean, I feel like this is how everyone should do it. I'm just going by what I believe the point spread is going to be. So that's how you determine an upset. You know what I mean? If a team is not favored but they win a game, I'm considering that an upset. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. If you think it's going to be a pick 'em, you're not going to include it on this list.
Exactly. So I got 7 games, Shane. I want to see if you agree with me on these. Number 7, Alabama on the road at Ole Miss, November 12th. I think we have to throw this into discussion, and I'm putting it there because I assume, Alabama's a favorite damn near every time they take the field. So they are going to be favored in this game. Ole Miss, I think they have a shot. They got played perfect, but it's last on this list because, I don't want to say the wheels are falling off at Ole Miss, but certainly they got exposed a little bit last week.
Yeah, I think so too, man. And I think this one's always going to be on the list because if you think of last year's game, this was I hope you brought your popcorn, and that didn't last long. You know what I'm saying? I think Lane said that thing wasn't plugged in, but you still has to be lingering out there because I don't think there's another coach in the SEC that wants to beat Nick Saban. Well, besides Jimbo probably, but I would say Lane Kiffin's right up there with him.
All right, how about number 6? On my list, Shane, Georgia at Kentucky, November 19th. And, I'm putting it low on the list because Kentucky under Mark Stoops, they've never beaten Georgia. I realize, they were one of the very few that kind of even came close against the Bulldogs last year. It did take a late score, but they gave them their best shot. It just wasn't enough. I need to see Kentucky beat Tennessee before I even will entertain that they can beat Georgia. Is that fair?
Oh, extremely fair, Mike. And is this a little pandering going on? You get somebody from Kentucky, and now we're predicting upsets against the Georgia Bulldogs. Just kidding. This one, we thought. I did personally thought that this would be the game that would decide the East coming into the season, and something they're going to talk about here in a little bit in your interviews. But it just feels like Kentucky has finally got their pieces together, and as long as they stay healthy, and as long as they can, kind of battle through some of these tough games they got coming up, they're in an interesting spot there. Georgia's got an interesting run, if you will. Haven't talked about them a lot, but their schedule gets a little bit tighter here in the back end. So you go Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State, and then Kentucky. So I like that it's at home. So this one's always got to be, it's got a little asterisk by it. It's not going to be an easy game. That's why they call it an upset.
Yeah. All right, how about number 5 on my list here, Shane? Alabama at LSU, November 5th. Both these teams on a bye this weekend. They'll face off in Death Valley next weekend. I might put this a little bit higher if I had a little bit more faith in LSU, but I certainly think they can get it done, but I don't know how likely it is. Thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, just 2-score favorite out of all the teams that Alabama plays. Usually it's more than that. And the fact it's at night, Death Valley, got like you said, a couple weeks to prepare for this thing. I think this is a game, Kelly knows everybody's going to be watching, and including Notre Dame fans. And he wants to prove to the country that he made the right decision coming down there to Baton Rouge. So I expect everything from the kitchen sink to be thrown at Alabama here.
All right, how about this one, Shane? Number 4 on my list, Tennessee at Georgia. Of course, November 5th, 2 weeks from now. I think it's a little bit more likely that Tennessee can pull off the upset in Athens, but again, that is going to be a monumental ask. Do you like where I put this, or do you think it's less likely? Do you think it's more likely? Thoughts on that?
Right now, I think it's in a good spot, brother. I do. I think all the games that you mentioned, this one I could see actually happening. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a Tennessee homer, but I mean, that's part of the reason. But the fact of the matter is, they've been serious underdogs before this season and have come away with a victory. So that says a lot about the character of this team. This is a team that has the ability to put points on anybody, even the best defense in the country, because I know a lot of people are saying that Georgia's the best defense, but statistically, there's some, I don't know how they do all these computer things. Mike, I'm going to be honest with you. I see a list that tells me that Alabama's the best per yards and per carry. You ever seen those? And then I take it. So I'm like, oh, look what we did to number 1 defense. But then eye contact, I know Georgia Bulldogs has got a hell of a defense, but I do think that Tennessee's going to be able to move the chains with them. So this one's going to be a fun, exciting game. And I know we've kind of already hinted on it a few times this week, and people are like, come on, give Kentucky some respect. But I think you're about to here in a minute on your list.
Exactly. It's like you're looking at it, Shane. Number 3, Kentucky at Tennessee this weekend. Again, I think that should give you an indication of where I'm leaning, Shane. I think Kentucky has got a shot here to pull it off this weekend. Thoughts on where I have this game?
Well, it's interesting enough that Tennessee is, if you're looking at Vegas, we're 12.5. We're 13. Tennessee's 13.5 with Georgia. So Vegas is predicting that this be a tighter ball game than Tennessee Georgia. So, if I'm looking at that, I mean, the writing's on the wall. And I'm not saying that Tennessee's going to overlook these guys at all, but it's a common thing. Every time we have somebody on the show, they always want to go to Georgia, Tennessee and Georgia. It's like Kentucky has a top 25 team, guys. And if you just look at, this is what they're seeing, brother. They're seeing, South Carolina beat them. Yeah. Ole Miss beat them, but you're not you didn't watch that game. You don't, I mean, most of them didn't watch how that played out. Hell, some of them didn't even know Will Levis didn't play during the South Carolina game. So that's why I cut off the bourbon bets. I don't want any more because it's too risky, because I am worried about a trap game here. So Mike, I think this is perfect on the list here.
All right, how about number 2, Shane? And this may surprise you, but again, I'm going off what I project the point spread to be. South Carolina at Florida, November 8th. I realize South Carolina's on a heater here, and Florida's got some tough games coming up here. Georgia, Texas A&M on the road, but I still think Florida will be given the respect by the point spread over South Carolina. Thoughts on that?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, Mike, you may turn notifications off because I can hear them typing now. Did you not look at the AP poll in South Carolina, top 25, Florida not? That would be the upset. The Gators winning. But I think you're right. By the time this game is actually played, I do think Florida will be favored. Not by much, but I still think that they're going to have, a one possession or one score spread anyway here. So, yes, I could see this. I was kind of hoping you'd go to Clemson, though. I think that would have been a better one here. Don't get me wrong. I think South Carolina, Florida is going to be a hell of a matchup, and it's going to be an exciting game to watch. But this has got to be the year that South Carolina upsets Clemson, right? I mean, they're going toe-to-toe against – I love the bearded trader. but they went toe to toe with Syracuse, and I don't care. I don't care how many writers they got up in ESPN. They ain't got no damn football players. It's Donovan McNabb. That is not a football team, brother. So get that the hell out of here. Switch it out. I want Clemson on here.
All right, number one on my list, Shane. I hope you're going to agree with this one. LSU at Arkansas, November 8th. I just think based on what we've seen, based on LSU's talent, they're going to walk into this game as a favorite. But I like Arkansas's chances to win at home and keep at Golden Boot. Thoughts on that?
Look here, 15 minutes in the show, and we're just now talking about Arkansas. Why do you hate Arkansas, Mike? I don't get it.
Oh, I'm saying they're going to pull this upset here.
No, I messed it with you. This is a sneaky game, brother.
Yeah.
Because I think of the schedule. Here you're coming off, emotional win with Florida. You've got Ole Miss. Now you're picking up steam. Win, lose, or draw this week with Alabama, there's going to be a natural letdown.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful because Arkansas is still dangerous. I mean, as long as their quarterback's there, you know what I'm saying? As long as no one else gets hurt on that defense, I think Arkansas is going to finish the season a top 25 team, Mike. It's not one of those programs that you can afford to overlook because as soon as you do, they can put points on anybody.
Well, I'll tell you who did overlook him, Shane. You and I on the last episode. So let's jump right into it. Arkansas hosting Auburn hosting Arkansas, and man, do we got some issues here on the Plains, Shane. 4 players have hit the portal this week from the Auburn Tigers. Travarius Dawson, the receiver, Landon King, another receiver, defensive tackle Zacchaeus Walker, and cornerback A.D. Diamond. And according to reports, Shane, what happened essentially was these players said, hey, we want to redshirt the year and just stop playing. And Brian Harsin said, well, you either play or you quit or you enter the transfer portal. Which is it? And they said, well, nice knowing you, coach. We're in the portal. So on the outside looking in, you see that. You say, my God, Auburn's falling apart. But, in reality, they are still fighting hard for this. For this coach. I think what this says is maybe these are just guys that are not bought in clearly and wanting to save that eligibility. And maybe it's a little bit of that like bunker mentality where it's us against the world. But hell, Shane, it's already been that all season long, and it's not helping. So losing depth going down the SEC stretch, this could be a nightmare, don't you think?
Brother, we all work with these people, I mean, I got a couple at my office, and it's always the grass is greener kind of thing. And it's like, they're going to go anyway. Let them go. Sometimes they're a cancer in that locker room. I think this is, I'm not panicking. I mean, there's enough shit to panic about down there in Auburn than losing a couple of dudes that don't want to be there to begin with. I need you to buy in. This is when I need you to have my back, is at the tail end of this season. There's some games that Auburn can still win, including this week. And you can't do it if you've got players pulling you down, putting that negative mojo, not doing 100% in practice, little things like that bleeds over into the field. And then next thing you know, 1 or 2 drives where you've dropped the ball or you missed a block or some shit like that. Next thing you know, we lost another game. And Brian cannot afford that right now. He needs to have a united front in that locker room. So, whatever, get them out of there. We got to focus at task at hand.
Yeah. Well, let me just say this about the Auburn Tigers, Shane, though, that, you can make the case that they have really started to kind of put it together on the offensive side of the ball, at least as much as they can. I mean, they get the ground game going. Robbie Ashford at times has looked really good, particularly at home. We'll see what the crowd looks like. It's just an SEC game, Shane. This is a wild series where there's a lot of crazy things happening. You called Missouri, South Carolina poor man's game of the week. I'm calling this one poor man's game of the week because I think it's going to be high scoring because I got very little confidence in Arkansas's defense. I got very little confidence in Auburn to do much of anything. So, I mean, this may be like the first of 40, 45 points. I think it's going to be back and forth, back and forth. I just don't have confidence in Auburn to get there, but I certainly think that they can. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, they got the over-under at 62 right now, so think about that. That's a lot of touchdowns. That's a lot of field goals. So,
yeah.
I mean, this isn't Missouri and Auburn. This is, let's just leave the defense on the sideline and see who can score as many points as possible. So, no, I think this will be a fun, exciting game. It's not sexy. It's not drawing the attention. Obviously, we snoozed it and went over it. But the more that you look into it, I think this is a make or break for both those programs, man. Arkansas, we kind of said that with the BYU. It's a wake up call. They need to get this ball rolling. They've had a little break. They were able to heal some ailments, and it needs to be a starting point for them. If Arkansas is going to make that run for the tail end of the season, and I'm not saying Sam Pittman's in trouble losing his job, but he may be in trouble losing some recruits if he doesn't get some momentum down there in Arkansas. And you do that by beating teams like Auburn, but you also beat off shit. I was going. Well, you may want to edit that one out. What I was going to say is you shoo off the negative, I'm getting fired. Even though we all think Brian Harson's going to get fired at the end of this thing, there's still that lingering, well, can they afford it? And if he can close out the rest of the season with a couple of upset victories here in the SEC, who knows? They may give him another run at it. But there's a lot of pressure coming into this game.
Right. Yeah, hell, I mean, if they win the Iron Bowl, all of a sudden he's going to have a lot more fans down there at Auburn. You know what?
How much potential do you guys have to get better in the final 5 games of the season?
How much potential? Yeah. Yeah.
Particular areas that
Yeah.
the most potential to get better at?
Yeah, I think we better. All right. And I know what you're asking. I mean, we have a lot of potential to get better. And that's the great thing, right? That's the motivating thing is when you come back in, you're disappointed, but you really start to dive into and you make it factual, like what happened. All right, it's all fixable, right? Those things are fixable. And when you don't have effort, one of the things that, when you don't have great effort, when guys quit or guys give up, that's a problem. All right, because that's bigger than a scheme, that's bigger than a coaching point, that's bigger than a drill you can do and all that. And you don't see that. All right, you see guys digging in. They may not get where they need to be, or we didn't put them in the right position to be successful either way. But when you have effort and you have guys out there trying really hard and they practice like they have and they practice like they did yesterday, there's a lot of potential. And the guys that sit in this room, they see that too. We watch the tape. They see it, and when you're sitting there and you're going, okay, you're a lot closer to making that play or making something happen really special right there, and you see that, okay, this is what we got to do. So that makes you want to prepare harder, makes you want to go out there and do it even better that week in practice. Because in the game, you can be that much better if we just work on it Tuesday through Friday. So, yeah, I mean, every guy on this team has potential. We're developing. All right, every single game. And I say it to our guys all the time, football is a developmental game. All right, every single week you have to be getting better. There's no peaking, right? I mean, you're playing until the very last game, bowl game, championship game, whatever it is. You should be playing your best football. And as a football player, every game you play, you should be playing your best football. You're the most physical you've been. You're the smartest you've been. You had the reps, and the experience now is better than you've ever been. And if you're not thinking like that, you don't get to play this game very long. Some guys, this is it. All right, college will be the last time they ever put on shoulder pads and a helmet. So you want to be at your best every week and maximize it because you don't get to play this game very long in your life. So a lot of potential. To your point, to your question, we have a long ways to go and we have a lot of potential to get there.
Let me ask you about Arkansas. You mentioned that BYU game. KJ Jefferson threw 5 touchdowns. They at the end of the game, they basically kneeled it out. Otherwise, it could have been 6 there. They were just grounding and pounding, and now they've had 2 weeks to rest for this game. How much of a spirit lifter can it be, Shane, to go into a bye week, to get that win, and now you're coming in, you are going on the road to a place you've struggled at, to a program you struggled against, but you are the favorites for a reason. You should be going to this game. Ton of confidence. Your offense is damn near unstoppable when it's healthy. Mm-hmm. How much momentum do you think the Razorbacks have going into this one?
A lot, Mike. A lot. And I think they proved it to themselves last week when they went to BYU and came away with the victory. Mm-hmm. And having that extra week to kind of heal, especially that defense side of the ball, I think we're going to have some, a little bit more competitive depth because, when you look at their schedule, beyond Auburn, they've got Liberty, LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri. I can convince you that they can win all those games if you give me enough time. And if we win out and we finish with a 9-3 season, going to I don't know if it's a New Year's Bowl, but I would imagine it's a hell of a game.
Yeah,
that's again, it's momentum. It's a program that's moving in the right direction. Obviously, we didn't have the depth that we want, but it's still depth that we can create. And I think Arkansas is in a good spot. I just think we convinced ourselves earlier in the season that they were further along than they actually were.
Right. And the beauty is, Shane, I mean, Arkansas fans lived it. They went through just an incredibly difficult stretch of the season. Now LSU and Ole Miss will be going right through that as they come to Fayetteville. So in a way, it lines up really, really well for, even like I said, even if LSU's a favorite, even if Ole Miss is a favorite, which I don't think they would be by the time they have to play at Arkansas. But even if they are, I still like Arkansas to be able to pull those games at home. But it's got to start here on Saturday. Otherwise, that's nothing but a pipe dream, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, they've lost 3 in a row. But like you said, they're talented. There's really a lot of noise down at Auburn about, Brian Harsin. Just what are you expecting from them?
I think they're playing really hard. It's Auburn. We haven't beat them, so since I've been here, we're 0-2 against them. But I think they're playing hard, and for them to come back after being down 21-0 the last game against Ole Miss and come back and make that a close, good football game on the road, I think it says a lot about their coaching staff and the kids still believing in them and playing extremely hard.
And then your team went on a run in the second half of last season. Is that an experience you feel like you can draw on this season? What do you draw from that?
Yeah, we're trying to. We're trying to do a lot of things similar to what we did last year in practice and the bye week, except last year we went ahead and practiced on Thursday physically. But I think anytime you have the same players on your team that did it, fairly well last year, and we didn't win them all. I think we won 4 out of the last 5. But I think that always helps and helps the belief of, coach just isn't up there blowing smoke. We've done it before, and we'd have opportunity to do it again, and we need to, honestly.
All right, buddy. Hey, let's kick it over to our interview here with Nick Roush. This is an all-timer. This is the most we've ever talked about Cousin Shade on one of these damn interviews. I felt like you were doing the interviewing.
Oh, man. When he came over at SEC Media Days, I thought when the lights came on, Mike was going to get his ass whooped up here in front of Paul Feinbaum and everybody.
All right, we're pleased to once again be joined by friend of the show, Nick Roush, one of the best out there covering the SEC. And, of course, he covers the Kentucky Wildcats for Kentucky Sports Radio and On 3 Sports. Nick, how's it going, buddy?
It's going well. Excited for, one of the bigger games that I've covered for the University of Kentucky, Kirk Herbstreit. This will be the first time that Kentucky's getting the Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler treatment down at Neyland Stadium. And so the Cats get a chance to play spoiler. And as bad as that South Carolina loss was, and as heartbreaking as that Ole Miss loss was, failing to score there in the final 3 drives, you can get a lot of goodwill back if you go and wreck Tennessee season down in Knoxville this Saturday.
Yeah, and it's a huge weekend for us on our show, of course, because we got the Bourbon Bet going live with many listeners. We got a lot of loyal listeners from Kentucky, and the first ever in-person Bourbon Bet between Nick Roush, Cousin Shane at SEC Media Days. If Kentucky loses, Nick says he'll send some of that fine Kentucky bourbon down to Cousin Shane.
Mm-hmm.
If Kentucky wins, Shane's got to send that whiskey up to I believe you live in Louisville, right? So
That's correct. Yeah.
let's play the clip real quick from SEC Media Days just to verify I'm not making any of this up.
Last thing I have for you, I know this may be a little bit sensitive for the Kentucky fan base, but the Tennessee-Kentucky game, they used to play for a beer barrel.
Yes.
And I realize why they don't do it anymore, tragic death.
It was, yes.
But do the Kentucky fans, do they want that back? Because Tennessee people, we're dying to bring the beer barrel back.
We need to bring it back. And the problem is we got an athletic director right now that beer's a 4-letter word. Unless you're rich. If you've got money, you can drink it in the suites. You can't drink it anywhere else. But it is one of those things that I know there's a negative connotation around it.
Yeah.
But this is a cool damn trophy. Can we not just have a cool trophy for a rivalry game? And now we're finally winning it every once in a while. And it doesn't just have Tennessee wins all over it.
I don't want to put you on the spot or anything. You don't have to commit at all. But we, on our show, we got a lot of Kentucky fans. Mm-hmm. So because there's no beer barrel, what we do is we call it the Bourbon Bet game.
Okay.
And if Kentucky wins, they have to sell us. They send us Kentucky whiskey.
No. If they win, which is not often,
rare.
But
it's very rare. We send them Tennessee
whiskey.
Okay.
And then we'll get.
Mayor's bet. I'm up for a mayor's bet. Let's do it, Shane.
Yeah. All right.
Deal.
You got it, brother.
Deal.
First time.
All right, and then Nick, so Cousin Shane, he did want me to make this offer to you. Because Tennessee is just such a juggernaut, he will not hold it against you if you want to back out of this thing heading into this game. Do you have a response to that?
Scare money don't make no money, Shane. All right. I am not afraid of you and your stupid volunteers in their black uniforms. Like, oh, we're blacking it out. You're wearing black to your own funeral. It's really cute. I appreciate it. And I just cannot wait to taste Tennessee Volunteers. I cannot wait to hear Boo Birds like the last time Kentucky played at Knoxville. People will forget the last time Kentucky was down in Knoxville. They won. They won that football game. Jared Garantano threw about 17 pick sixes. I don't think that's the same recipe for a Kentucky victory this time, but nevertheless, I'm not the biggest fan of Tennessee whiskey, but it's going to taste so good coming from Cousin Shane. The best drinks are free ones, and I'm going to be drinking it up heartily after a huge win Saturday night, Cousin Shane.
So let me ask you about this matchup with the fans and everything. I know you're very plugged into this Kentucky fan base. Is this the game more than any other that Kentucky fans want to win?
I think it is this year. For the longest time, it was, especially when Bobby Petrino was at Louisville, like there was so much animosity between the two programs then. And, they had Lamar Jackson and everything was exciting then. But I do feel like the winds have shifted because over the last 10 years, maybe, go back to even the last 6, right? Maybe it started in 2017. Kentucky's win-loss record, I don't have it in front of me. I haven't been crunching the numbers as usual. Had a kid recently, so we're not doing as much homework. But Kentucky has a better record over the last 5-6 years, and yet they've only got 2 wins to show for it, right? This has been the team that, especially in that 2018 season where it was one of Kentucky's best teams ever, they go and lay a stinker down in Knoxville. This is the one program that you're close to, you're more similar than you are different, and yet they've consistently had the upper hand. This win could go a long way because of how much it could hurt the other team, right? It's kind of similar to, and it's not the exact same, but it's kind of how it was when Tennessee beat Alabama, when you're able to exercise those demons and finally get one up on the rival. This could go a long way to really shut up those Vols who, as good as they've been as of late. The difference last year, it was just a pick 6, right? That was the game. It was a shootout that came down to one big turnover for Tennessee. I think the game really can be a close, down to the wire. It's all coming down to who makes the biggest plays in crunch time.
What's your confidence level that the Kentucky offensive line will hold up? They've had 2 weeks to prepare, get healthy. Will Levis getting back to health. What's your confidence level that they hold up against Tennessee?
I actually am a lot of people would be more worried about Tennessee's offense and how you match up with them. But you make a great question though, Mike, because I'm probably more worried about the offensive side of things. Like the key for Kentucky to win this game is, can they turn scoring opportunities into touchdowns and not just field goals? Running the football, they've shown signs, right? Like Chris Rodriguez was once again a monster against Mississippi State. He looked like old Chris Rodriguez once again. They are going to be healthy once again on that offensive line, but it's, will you be able to score? I brought that Ole Miss game earlier. The final 3 possessions, turnover on downs in Ole Miss territory, turnover inside the Ole Miss red zone. They're good at moving the ball, and they're good at actually dictating the pace of the game. If there was I think they can make this a limited possession game, but it all comes down to, are you kicking field goals or are you scoring touchdowns at the end of drives? Kentucky a year ago under Liam Cohen, they were outstanding in the red zone, and they were outstanding on third downs. Kentucky's still good on third downs thanks to Will Levis, but they're leaving too many points off the scoreboard when they get in opponent's territory.
Now, I realize you're not a coach, and those guys in Lexington, they're getting paid for a reason, but what would Roush, what would your game plan be for Kentucky heading into this matchup? Would you try to limit the possessions of Tennessee and pound with Chris Rodriguez, or do you look at it this like, hey, as good as Kentucky's defense is playing, they're probably, giving up 30 points would be a good performance. Tennessee's averaging 50. Would you try to outscore them with Will Levis and Chris Rodriguez and these outstanding receivers that should really, that matchup should favor Kentucky because Tennessee's secondary has been so average at best this season?
Yeah, if I think I'm doing one thing to try to throw a curveball, if you will, it's maybe throw it a little more on first down, right? And it doesn't have to be anything over, even if it's just a screen to Barryon Brown. He showed us in that Ole Miss game, he caught 2 screen passes and had 80 some odd yards, right? Like, you don't have to do a lot for these receivers to get a lot of receiving yards. It looks like Tavion Robinson is going to be back for this game after the Virginia Tech transfer, missed the Mississippi State game. I think a lot of it is just trying to, you can't forget about Chris Rodriguez, right? Because he's your most consistent playmaker. But when they're selling out for the run, you've got to be able to dump it over the top of those linebackers that are getting downhill. So I think a lot of it is just it's just getting a good feel for when to time up those shots. And a lot of it is probably going to be throwing the ball on first down. That's a dangerous game to play against Tennessee, getting behind the chains. But I ultimately think if you can have some passing success on first down, that the passing game can actually open up that rushing game for Chris Rodriguez, where you can create some long drives and keep that Tennessee offense off the field.
Now, those Kentucky coaches, Nick, they've said Will Levis, they would take no one over him. Josh Heupel, same thing. Not going to take anyone over Hendon Hooker. Maybe that's coach speak, but in your opinion, who is going to have a better game here on Saturday? Because it may just simply come down to which quarterback is more on point on Saturday, particularly if it's a high-scoring football game.
No, you're exactly right, Mike. And I'm riding or dying with Will Levis, of course. But I think if you look at the biggest differences between the two this year, it's Hooker is still doing a good job of creating some yards and some big plays with his feet, where that just hasn't been the case with Will Levis this year. He's become much more of a pocket passer, right? He's not jumping over dudes. He's not lowering his shoulder. And ultimately, that's the kind of plays, even though you kind of want that if you're Kentucky, the biggest game-changing, I think some of the biggest game-changing plays of the year have been Hooker getting aggravating 3rd and 13s with his feet. That's I think that is the ultimate difference maker, and obviously the turnover category, because as good as Will Levis has been, and even though he's made a lot of those next level kind of pro football throws that we talk about so often that NFL draft analysts love, he has just turned the ball over more. And Hooker is, I swear, my biggest bet going into the season is that there's no way he can keep playing at that level. You know what? Hendon Hooker, you can definitely keep playing this well. There's no chance you're going to commit 3 turnovers against Kentucky. It's impossible. There's no way he's going to get worse. It's just he's just one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen, and no way he's going to make a bunch of just definitely just game-crushing mistakes. It would be just such a shame if that happened against Kentucky.
Yeah, brilliant. I see what you did there. Well, let me ask you a follow-up real quick on that. Why is Will Levis not running? Is it because he's been banged up, or is it more because we've seen, the drop-off without Will Levis in the lineup? They just can't afford to get him hurt.
See, and a lot of it is a conscious decision by the coaching staff. Like, if we let go of the rope and just let him run, he's going to, and he's gonna lower his shoulder, and bad things can happen. And Rich Scangarello, a guy who spent a lot of time in the NFL, just knows, like, it doesn't matter how big and how strong you are, you're just going to get a hit that you can't come back from. So I think a lot of that was a conscious effort that this guy is going to try so damn hard. If we're going to use him to run, we have to be careful because, I mean, we saw what Kentucky was like without him. This season's going to go as far as number 7 takes him. They can't afford for him to get banged up. And a lot of it, too, comes down to when the pressure's breaking down in pass protection, there hasn't always been those holes, right? Like when the play breaks down, he hasn't had that wiggle room to be able to run and create plays with his legs, unlike Hendon Hooker, he's really slippery. You got to give that guy a ton of credit. He's exceeded my expectations this year. And frankly, I hope he does not on Saturday because he has been as good. He's been an outstanding college quarterback. And I'm curious when, 5-6 months from now, when the draft talk starts, how much do teams knock him for playing in this? I'm not going to call it a gimmicky, but like it's a very unique college only system. How much are they going to knock him, and how much are they just going to say, you know what, like this dude just doesn't turn it over. He's got a great arm. He's got to be in the first round pick because he could end up being that guy, a la Lamar Jackson, where they thought that he was just going to be a college star, and then he ended up sneaking into the end of the first round and being a quality NFL quarterback.
All right, moment of truth. Final question here, Nick. I already know what you're going to say. Prediction: who's winning the football game, and do you have a score prediction?
Ultimately, I really think that Ole Miss game prepared this team a lot for what they're going to see as far as tempo goes. Obviously, Ole Miss runs the ball a lot more than Tennessee will, but also Kentucky secondary outside of Keidron Smith, they've seen this before. No, and Smith even saw it last year down in the famous mustard game. So they know what they're facing this time, unlike last time. I don't think it's going to be a shootout. I think it's going to be a much lower scoring game. And really, it's going to come down to who can make plays at the end to convert. Tennessee has done it before, but here's the thing, Mike. I'm going to give you Kentucky, but I'm ultimately probably going to pick Tennessee to win like a 31-28 type of game, maybe 31-27, because Kentucky has not shown it enough to me this year when it comes down to scoring, opportunities, making the most of them, and making silly turnovers. There's been a lot of silly turnovers, a lot of self-inflicted mistakes, whether it be on special teams. I mean, they've snapped 2 balls. They've given up 2 safeties this year, just snapping over dudes' heads. They missed extra points. You can't do that against this team. It has to go on the other way, and I just don't know if I trust Kentucky enough to do it. So, Shane, I'm still not giving up the faith. I'm going to get some bourbon off of you, but ultimately I am going to predict a Tennessee win. Slightly.
Yeah, you've already tweeted the Tennessee black jersey going to a funeral for the Vols, so I'll be sure to retweet that Saturday night. No one, we saw that. We'll remind you of it, but we really do appreciate it, Nick. Before you go, tell the audience where to find all your outstanding work.
I'm at Roush KSR on Twitter. That's ROUSH, like the Mustang, Roush Racing. And you can find me at KentuckySportsRadio.com. We've got plenty of podcasts on the Kentucky Sports Radio YouTube, and I also do a radio show on the Big X Sports Radio, 7 to 9 each Monday morning, Monday through Friday. So we tweet out that podcast. It's everywhere. So really appreciate y'all having me on. Let me spread the good Kentucky Big Blue gospel, and would love to dance on Cousin Shane's grave Sunday morning. Would just absolutely nothing would give me more joy than to do that.
All right, so there you got it from Nick, and even Shane, big Kentucky backer there.
Yeah.
Likes Tennessee's odds to get the win. Maybe, I think he's playing some of that, he's trying to put the jinx, trying to put that hex on them Vols, but it's pretty bad for the. I mean, hell, Cousin Ollie he may have just X Nick off his Christmas wish list. You know what?
I tell you what, people don't know what these guys are doing, like Nick and Ollie in particular, this rat poison they're spreading all over our Twitter. I know what you're doing. I know exactly what y'all are doing and getting us. They're creating that trap game scenario, and I could see right through it, Mike. But that's, again, what worries me, because every time you talk to somebody, they want to mention the Georgia game. They want to mention SEC championship, potential shots at the college football playoffs.
Yeah.
You'd think we're going to the BCS national champ just because we beat Alabama. No, we're not. We got to go one game at a time. That old cliche, get the cleats in the ground, as Stoops likes to say. So, brother, this is going to be an awesome game, and there's going to be a lot of alcohol exchanged after this thing. Hell, there'll be alcohol exchanged during this thing, because it's a night game. It's going to be an awesome electric environment. I want to, the bourbon bet's done. Everybody keeps asking me, how do I get in on this action? I'm done. All right, I got 3 here. 2 longtime listeners. We got Ollie, Todd. They are on the bourbon bet, and now we got Nick. He's probably he's got all them diapers and stuff now, so it's probably like a tiny bottle of bourbon, one of them ones you get at the airport. That's okay. Whatever he can send, I'll take it.
Well, speaking of rat poison, Shane, if that's your cup of tea, John Reed is here to deliver at Fox Sports Knoxville another outstanding and entertaining interview, this time from the Tennessee side. So let's kick it over to John.
Speaking of wrestling, I can see him coming off the top rope like the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, we're pleased to once again be joined by friend of the show, John Reed. Of course, you know him, host of Talk Sports on Fox Sports Radio, Knoxville, and of course, Reed's Ranch podcast. He's been covering Tennessee, and I thank my lucky stars that we got a guy like John Reed. Otherwise, Greg Schiano may be the coach up here at Tennessee. So, John, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. How you doing, my friend?
It is funny how, a couple years ago, people were like, man, we maybe should have just let the whole Schiano thing go because Jeremy Pruitt sort of suck. Way to go, idiot. Thanks for stopping it and ruining everything. So now all of a sudden Tennessee, maybe a week away from being the number 1 team in the country when the college football playoff rankings come out. It's crazy how fast, things go. And even here, with me and you, I know I've came on the show with you twice. At one point we were talking about, where does Tennessee go with the coaching search? And I was like, you know what? Let's go with the defensive coach. Let's kick the tires on somebody like Gerard Mayo if we're going to get so far down our list. And of course, Tennessee with an offensive coach, and it's paying huge dividends. And then the other time we came on, we were talking about, hey, maybe Tennessee needs to take things seriously because they're falling behind. I think the phrase I used, Mike, was they need to decide if they're a big boy or not, because they had just lost out on a transfer. I believe it was Isaiah Neyor, coming from Wyoming. He chose Texas instead. And we just had a conversation where it's like, Tennessee is at a crossroads where we are, we have to decide if we are a big boy or not. And I was worried that we were going to decide we were not. But right after that, the NIL stuff started really rolling. Spire Sports, shout out to them. And pretty much everything from that moment on has been gold for all of Tennessee athletics. So you win some, you lose some. It's fun.
Well, yeah. Well, in Tennessee, all they've been doing is winning this year, John, of course. And fans are excited. This is a great time to be a Tennessee Vol. But let me ask you this. If you were to go up against Tennessee, what would your game plan be? Because this is, I think, the biggest question heading into this Kentucky game, going into this Georgia game 2 weeks from now. Do you try to outscore Tennessee and maybe, get a turnover here or there? Or do you just try to limit their possessions and kind of do game control? Because that was the plan for Kentucky, it seemed like, last season. But hell, not even that worked. So how would you go about trying to defend or stop Tennessee's winning streak?
Yeah, the Kentucky game was so funny last year because, time of possession, it was like 46-14. And it was just a perfect combination of Kentucky being able to sustain long drives and Tennessee just hitting 1 or 2 play touchdown drives, mixing with a pick six. So, you kind of threw time possession out the window. I mean, really, the way I think you stop Tennessee's offense is to go back to 2021 and start faking cramps again. but it seems like the SEC has really kind of put a stop to that. I know they haven't really said anything publicly, but you can't convince me that there wasn't like a memo sent to coaches to be like, hey, we can't do this anymore. No more, because you haven't seen it, sport wide, league wide so far, the entire year, when that was maybe the number one or number two talking point. I think with Tennessee, it's as simple as if Tennessee can pick up one first down, they are going to score, because once they can go really fast, you have no chance. Like Alabama got lost with Tennessee's tempo and matchup problems and wide splits and motion. And, the fact they're trying to put these guys out on an island and make these college kids make snap decisions and make the correct read. And if not, Jalen Hyatt's running 50 yards down the field. I think the only chance you have of stopping Tennessee, and, knock on wood and, all of that, but you just gotta slow down the tempo, and no one's been able to really do that so far. And this year, Tennessee's just been so much more effective at, running the ball and then, turning that into big plays. People always kind of talk about Tennessee being an air raid offense. That couldn't be further from the truth. Like, they are chew you up and spit you out on the ground and then go over your top. Like, they're really, really balanced. And as soon as, like I said, they pick up 8 yards and get to 2nd and 2, and then you're going fast, then you get a first down, and next thing you know, Tennessee's in the end zone. Your only hope is to, fall down and grab your leg, it seems like.
Well, you hit on a player I wanted to ask you about, John. Jalen Hyatt. I mean, he's in the zone right now. He's unstoppable, seemingly. I mean, he's got more touchdowns than damn near half the league in the SEC receiving wise. Can you recall, and it doesn't even have to be football, but can you recall a Tennessee athlete being on such an incredible hot streak that Jalen Hyatt's on right now?
Yeah, I mean, no, I can't. And, other sports, I'm sure there's been a Tennessee baseball player who's been smashing home runs. Gilbert Beck, one of those guys surely had a run like that. Trey Lipscomb last year. Basketball, I mean, Grant Williams was pretty damn good, winning back-to-back, or being, back-to-back SEC player of the year. He was on a big streak. But what Hyatt's doing, just to kind of go from promising freshman, I should say, that showed a couple of flashes, mostly only in the Alabama game. He burned Patrick Surtain a couple of times. Like, okay, there's something here. If we can harness that, this guy has what it takes. And then all of last year was pretty much, I mean, I hate to say it, but I think he would tell you the same thing, was pretty much a non-factor. And you looked and you're like, man, is this a guy that's maybe going to hit the transfer portal? Is this a guy that's going to be like, hey, I got to get out of here because I've gotten passed up? Instead, he said, you know what? I decided I had to take things seriously. I decided I had to have to hit the weight room. I have to learn the offense. And then, just to see him kind of explode, even game 1 didn't do much. Game 2 against Pittsburgh, I think if you go back, I think he had 10 catches for like 90 yards, or just kind of Pittsburgh was kind of giving him the easy free 5 or 6 yard pass. And he wasn't doing much with it, but was taking what the defense gave him. And then the moment Cedric Tillman went out, it was like, okay, now let's just spread the ball around. Let's just exploit matchups. And Hyatt has been on a run that, Kelly Washington, maybe back in the day, or even Cedric Tillman at the end of last year, those are special runs you get on as a wide receiver. And he's on a hot streak. He is 1 touchdown away from already tying the school record for single season touchdown records, tying up Marcus Nash. That's ridiculous to be in game 6 and already looking at that.
Now, a lot of people, John, have started to compare this Tennessee team to the 2019 LSU team, but according to my listeners, you were the first one to kind of get that train going down the tracks. What did you see in this team that made you think of that 2019 LSU team and your confidence level that they can finish the deal? Hendon Hooker can win the Heisman and win a national championship. I realize that's still that may be a tall task, but do you think this team can finish the deal?
Well, I mean, the conversation started 12-3 every day, talk sports, fan run radio. The conversations kind of started as a joke, or just like it was I won't say a joke. It was like, what's the ceiling for this team? What's the best case scenario for this team? Because, you're talking like, hey, this team could maybe go 10-2 and lose to everybody but Georgia and Alabama. Like, that's very realistic, And then you're just like, well, actually, if everything clicks, Hendon Hooker, I mean, if you check the comparison to Joe Burrow, like Joe Burrow wasn't Joe Burrow until Joe Burrow was Joe Burrow. You know what I mean? Like Joe Burrow, his first year of 2018 at LSU, he was a solid quarterback, but it wasn't really until that UCF player took a cheap shot on him and got the personal foul penalty after the interception, that he became a different guy. And, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, those are great wide receivers in the NFL. They were great wide receivers at LSU, but, you looked at Tennessee's receivers, you're like, okay, Cedric Tillman, his numbers are pretty good, and you knew there was some potential there with Jalen Hyatt, and Brew McCoy was a 5-star. You're just like, if everything clicks, this offense can just outscore you. And much like LSU's defense was in 2019, they didn't really win games for you. They got better as the year went on. And, when the offense is putting such pressure on the other team that you can capitalize on some mistakes and such. But we kind of just started talking about it as the ceiling of the team. And then, you get to the Pittsburgh game, and it wasn't as high scoring, but it was kind of like reminiscent of the Texas game in 2019, where LSU, you make one play and Joe Burrow, takes it from a 6-point game to a 14-point game, and boom, it's over. And like, hey, you survived that game. Then you get more time, you start clicking. And, that's kind of how this season has played out. And again, I don't know if Jalen Hyatt's going to be anything close to Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase in the NFL, but Tennessee's got a pretty good stable of wide receivers. And Hendon Hooker, I don't think he's going to be the number one pick in the draft like Joe Burrow, but I do think he is well positioned to win the Heisman. And I do think he has a expertise of this offense. I think the offense is explosive. I think the defense is good enough. And you're just going to have to line up and outscore Tennessee, much like you did that LSU team, and no one could do it. No one could match up with all those wide receivers. Then, Tennessee, if they get Cedric Tillman back, is going to, just add to their riches already on offense.
Now, I may have already just kind of played into this, so I apologize for, putting the cart in front of the horse, but we're talking Heisman. We're talking college football playoff. There's an epic Georgia game in 2 weeks. What are the odds, in your opinion, that Tennessee is overlooking a dangerous Kentucky team coming into Neyland Stadium? Should Tennessee, be taking this team a little bit more serious as a challenger to potentially pull the upset?
Nah, see, it's a good question, Mike. Like me personally, my focus is almost like 95% on the Georgia game. I have, I got my tickets today. I've got my logistics I'm planning out. Like, I'm figuring out how to get down there. I don't view Kentucky really as a threat. To me, it's all about, November 5th. Like, can you line up and win the biggest regular season game of the season? However, I'm not playing football. I don't have to worry about being focused on Kentucky because I'm not going out there to play. I think Josh Heupel has had the boys ready to play every week. Like, if there was a chance for a letdown game, would it not have looked pretty sloppy against Tennessee Martin a week after beating Alabama? I understand the defense gave up a touchdown on their second drive, but, the offense was ready. The defense was ready, after that one drive, and it was about as sharp as Tennessee's looked all year. I have a lot of confidence that Josh Heupel is focused on the bigger goal, but most importantly, I think this Tennessee team is special when you just look at the leadership of the team. I know people are starting to make fun of Hendon Hooker's age, of him being 24 years old, but like, there is a value in him being old. Like, he is mature. He is locked in. He is, focused on the goal. You have Darnell Wright. You have some defensive guys who have been here and know that, like, hey, this is a chance for a special season. Let's lock in. Let's win every game. Maybe the black jerseys help. Maybe dark mode helps. Maybe, breaking out the black, which, did you see? Looks pretty sharp. Maybe that gets the guys juiced up. I think the crowd's going to be fired up because the crowd, is going to be electric because they know that right now you are in the midst of what could be a very, very, very special season. So I find it almost impossible they would come out and lay an egg. Like, I really do. So I don't think that they are overlooking Kentucky. I am overlooking Kentucky. I 100% am. I don't think they can keep up with Tennessee. I don't think they can block Tennessee's defensive line. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball like they did last year because their offensive line is nowhere near as good as it was last year. And Tennessee's run defense is much, much better than it was last year. I don't want to say this is going to be a complete replay of the LSU game, but like, I didn't think Jaden Daniels could hurt Tennessee through the air. I'm not sure Will Levis can hurt Tennessee through the air. Not so much because I don't think Will Levis is good enough. I don't think he's that good, but also because I just don't think Kentucky's going to be able to block Tennessee. And it's one of those situations where, if you get down a couple scores and then you can kind of pin your ears back and send a bunch of pressure, like, I think he might be in for a long, long day. Because, I mean, you're the SEC expert. Kentucky's offensive line, worst at pass protection in the league, right?
Yeah.
Weren't they like dead last in like sack rate? I thought I saw they were last, at least heading into last week. Like, I know they ain't been very good at blocking, and they were giving up 4 sacks a game. That's pretty tough.
Yeah,
Pretty tough to come into Neyland, who's going to be really loud and be able to handle that.
they've been about as pathetic as you can imagine for not only pass blocking but run blocking. Now Chris Rodriguez has come back and he's been a beast, but he's just so talented that I think he can even be hit behind the line of scrimmage and somehow still turn it into a 3-yard gain. So, yeah, I mean, I think you have a great point there. Let me ask you about this Kentucky series, John. Does it even rank on your scale as a rivalry for Tennessee, or is it not even close to, say, the top 3 on Tennessee's schedule?
Oh no. Tennessee Kentucky is a huge rivalry in basketball. In football, I don't think about Kentucky football. No. I'm 32 years old. They've beat me 3 times. One time they should have gotten Derek Dooley fired when the team was like, actually, we don't want to go to a bowl game. We don't really care about this. We don't want to go 6-6. How about we just get to chill over Christmas break? We lost to a wide receiver playing quarterback because we scored 7 points with maybe, until Josh Heupel got here, maybe the best offense we had in 20 years, because they're all just like, we're good. The other time was Butch Jones's 4-8 season when you still almost went in there and beat them. You threw a Hail Mary. It got called at the 3-yard line. You almost won that game. You were winning the whole game. You still almost beat Kentucky. And the other one, of course, was a COVID-shortened season. Jeremy Pruitt, lame duck, 3-7, which, by the way, Mike, the COVID year didn't count. Asterisk didn't count. Kentucky has never won inside Neyland Stadium in my lifetime. They haven't won there in 40 years. I'm not counting it when it's 25% full. Kentucky is going to see a raucous 100% crowd on Saturday, and that whole can't win in Neyland thing is going to continue. So no, Kentucky is not a rival in football. Absolutely not. The only thing that would have made it that is the beer barrel, but we got rid of that. Otherwise, they are completely irrelevant. They want to beat Tennessee. I think we are a rival to them, but no. Kentucky does not move the needle for me.
Yeah, and if you need any further proof that the COVID season was bogus, Jimbo Fisher had a good year down at A&M just in that year.
Thank you. Yes, great point.
So hey, the answer may be neither, but so who scares you more going into this matchup, Will Levis or Chris Rodriguez?
Well, I mean, the running back. I mean, Chris Rodriguez is awesome. Since he got back, he's gotten better every week. Last week he ran for 190 yards. I mean, he was awesome. But I don't think he can win the game. So I guess I have to say Will Levis, because if Tennessee is going to struggle, it's going to have to be because Will Levis actually looks like the number 1 pick. Why? Again, I don't care at all about Kentucky football. I haven't watched really them play all year. Why is he not running the ball this year? Is it because he's a first-round pick and wants to protect himself? Is it because the offensive line is so bad he's getting hit so many times? But when I look at his numbers, last year, he was a pretty good runner, right? He had 380 yards, somewhere around there. And this year, he's negative 47 or so, which I understand sacks take away from that. But that, his longest run of the year outside of one of their ball games is 7 yards. He isn't, doing anything in the run game.
Yeah,
why is that?
That's interesting, John. I just had a Kentucky guy on. I asked him the same thing, and he said it's a combination of him being injured and the fact that, hell, we've seen the backup. He's so god awful they lost to South Carolina at home. So it's, this has to be a Will Levis takeover game, kind of like Anthony Richardson you had against Tennessee, and still that was not even close to enough to get the Florida Gators a victory. But I will tell you this, if you don't know much about Kentucky, they do got a trio of receivers, Tavion Robinson, Barian Brown, Dane Key. Those are dangerous, dangerous players, and I think Kentucky's going to have a major edge in this matchup when we're talking their receivers versus Tennessee's secondary. So it could be a shootout style game, but I sure as hell would not favor Kentucky in a shootout over this Tennessee offense. So let me ask you, moment of truth here, John. What's your score prediction for this game?
I mean, you're right about Anthony Richardson. He played his ass off against Tennessee, but it still wasn't close enough. When you saw 53 minutes go by, it was 38-20, 38-21, whatever it was. So as well as he played, it still wasn't going to be close enough. You talk about the trio of receivers; they are good. They are good, and I guess I shouldn't say I haven't watched Kentucky, because I did watch them choke away that Ole Miss game. But I just the spread's 12. I think the point totals where you're projecting is I think it's like 38 to 24 is kind of what the odds makers have for each team's team total. I really think Tennessee is going to win somewhere around like 41, 42 to like 24. I do think that's kind of going to be what it ends up being. I think Tennessee wins by at least 17. I feel comfortable with that just because I do think, like you said, you don't want to get in a shootout with Tennessee. Like, for as good as Kentucky's wide receivers are, I still don't think you want to get in a shootout with Tennessee when you can't block. To get in a shootout, you got to be able to drop back a pass. And when Tim Banks is going to send pressure on Will Levis, and then we are going to, see Tennessee be able to get home because they've done that every game. Make no mistake, I know you didn't get Bryce Young to the ground too often against Alabama, but you were in his face and making him run around and make plays all day. He's Bryce Young. He can make those plays. I don't think Will Levis can. I think he's much more likely to end up like Keaton Slovis did in the Pittsburgh game where he just is, just gets hit, and knocked out. I think that's more likely than him being able to keep this game close or win it.
All right, John, I've never asked a guest to do this, but 2 weeks out, you said you're already focusing on Georgia, and I'll just tell you this. If Tennessee wins comfortably on Saturday against Kentucky, everything I've been told, Tennessee is going to be number 1 in the debut college football playoff rankings. I don't know if that's plays into their favor, going to Athens, defending national champion, undefeated. I'm not asking for a score prediction, but what are the odds that you think Tennessee can go down to Athens and beat Georgia in 2 weeks?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question because Tennessee is going to be number 1 after they beat Kentucky. I think their resume is so good. But they're also, like in the early look ahead lines, 13.5-point underdogs, which frankly blows my mind. I don't want to be a homer. I know I might come across as a huge homer here, but like I respect Georgia, but like a 13-point underdog seems kind of crazy when you can score like Tennessee can. But the one thing I'm holding on hope to, I guess, since I am rooting for Tennessee, I know, I'm supposed to be media and unbiased, but that's not what we do at Fan Run Radio. But like, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe there's another instance that I'm missing. 2019, LSU played Georgia. I recall LSU's wide receivers being open the entire day against Georgia in the 2019 SEC Championship, right or wrong?
Correct.
Last year in the SEC Championship, when Alabama's receivers were healthy, I remember those guys being open all day long against Georgia, right or wrong?
Correct.
Is that and last year's Georgia team was better on defense than this year's team, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And I even think if you go to the national championship game, like I still think those receivers were open. It's just that they were all backups and couldn't catch the ball. Like I feel like Alabama dropped 3 big touchdowns or like big first downs, and they couldn't score like, inside the red zone, which by the way, Tennessee still a perfect 100% on scoring touchdowns if they get a goal to go situation. So like, I know it's a 13.5-point spread, but I truly feel like it's a 50-50 proposition. Like I think if Tennessee goes down there and can hit some big plays, they can win. It's going to be tough for Georgia to keep up. I understand they got a top 10 offense too. Like I do think they are a very good team. I don't want to act like I don't, but I spent a godly amount of money, Mike. I spent a godly amount of money on tickets next week. I would not have done that had I did not think Tennessee could win against Georgia. So I'm calling it a 50-50 proposition. And I'm holding on hope till they haven't been able to stop elite wide receivers. And I think Tennessee's got an elite passing game.
Yeah. All right, John. Hey, I appreciate you. As always, outstanding stuff. Before you go, tell the audience where to find your work.
Yeah, sorry everyone didn't get to see me on video. I am a 32-year-old boomer who cannot figure out how to work my video. But yeah, I'm on Twitter, JON2_Reed. I'm on the Fox Sports Knoxville app, Fan Run Radio. And then, yeah, you could go to Reed's Ranch, the podcast. Although chances are you're probably like, this guy's a jerk. I don't really like this guy. So don't go there because they'll just go and like give me like 1-star reviews. Don't do that. Don't do that. Mike, I appreciate you. And for all the times you've came on my show, I'm glad to return the favor, my friend.
All right, buddy. So, hey, he likes Tennessee to win big. Hell, he's not even worried about Kentucky. He's got his focus on Georgia and these playoffs and his Heisman Trophy.
Come on now.
Like he said,
I'm smiling ear to ear, Mike. That interview couldn't be long enough,
But he's right. He's not a player. It don't matter if he's overlooking them as long as the team is locked in and ready to play. But, man, that was a treat to have John back on the show. You know what?
Oh, it was great to have them both. This is what we like, man. Just this rivalries, man. We're getting toward the end of this thing, and there's some key matchups that are going to pop up that are going to make and break the SEC race. You know, Kentucky may not go to an SEC championship, but they can really dictate who does. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So this was awesome content.
All right, brother. Well, hey, that's all I've got on this episode of the show. You got anything before we hop off the line?
No. I'm trying to decide, should I go? I'm going to hold off getting the whiskey. You know, I feel like, you know, when you go to the game with a cigar, you know, for the Alabama, that symbolizes winning. Yep. If I pre-purchase the stuff, then that just means we're losing. So I'm not even gonna exercise that option, Mike. I'm hoping that I don't even need to go to the package store again. So, brother, I'm excited. I'm pumped up for some college football. We got our scores coming out tomorrow, our predictions. Of course, I pretty much gave you every prediction throughout the week if you've been listening. Of course, I'm easy to read. That's why I don't like playing cards with people, because I never win. I got a terrible poker face. But, brother, we're going to get into that tomorrow. If you're on the YouTube, I apologize about the no video. Audio, you probably don't care. You're like, I've already seen it. I've already seen him enough, you know. I've been waiting for that camera to go out for a long time. But, no, I went old school today. But I'll be back tomorrow in all my glory.
Absolutely. Well, brother, I think that's a good place to cut it. But, hey, as always, I don't want to forget, you've made it this far. Give us that 5-star written review on the Apple Podcast app. Leave us a review on Spotify. Follow us on YouTube. Do any of those. We're happy to send you a beer koozie of your choice. We got all 14 SEC teams represented by a koozie. So reach out to us at thatsecpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll send that your way. But that's going to do it, brother. I appreciate you as always. I appreciate each and every one of you for hanging out. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right. See you guys. Go Vols. Watch out for that rat poison, boys.